During the last final exam, I was the proctor. When the exam ended, all 48 students had lost their lives. The police immediately suspected me, but the autopsy results showed that all the students had taken their own lives. Therefore, I was released without charges. 3 years later, a medical student found me.
You made them do it, didn't you? I already know what question you gave the students that day.
All right, it was me. Facing this unexpected visitor, I continued cutting meat as usual, getting ready for today's lunch. I even turned around and warmly invited her. Come on, perfect timing for lunch. Let's eat and talk. Sarah was somewhat surprised by my frankness, but her gaze lingered on my kitchen knife for a few seconds before she sat down nervously. Many people have come looking for me these past few years. You're not the only one, I said, putting the prepared ingredient into the pot. After adjusting the heat, I sat across from her. But you're the first to guess that I gave them a question. Sarah suddenly stood up.
So you really?
Only then did I realize she was testing me. Since that was the case, she probably didn't know the content of the question either. So I laughed. Do you think it's possible? One question making 48 students willingly kill themselves? Sarah slowly sat back down. My expression changed. But I can do it. Sarah was a medical school student who had assisted in the autopsy of that mass case 3 years ago. She didn't believe 48 people would simultaneously choose to end their time, so she spent 3 years searching through all the materials, discovering that although it was supposed to be a final exam that day, no test papers were ever found from beginning to end. She boldly speculated that I had given them some kind of question myself.
But how is this possible? All 48 students were wealthy second-generation kids with bright futures ahead of them. Not one of them had a history of mental illness. How could they make an irreversible choice because of one question from you?
The kitchen timer rang. I got up to add seasonings, and the aroma of the soup filled the entire room. Sarah swallowed almost imperceptibly. It'll be ready soon. Dr. Sarah, try some later. This is my specialty. Sarah looked away from the pot.
No need, thank you. Let's talk about those children instead.
I put the lid back on and sat down, casually placing the kitchen knife on the table. Actually, the answer is obvious. Dr. Sarah participated in the autopsy back then. Do you remember the common characteristics of those remains? A flash of compassion crossed Sarah's face.
They were all horrific. Some were damaged to an extremely incomplete state. Even veteran forensic doctors would make mistakes in their judgment.
Unlike her sadness, I smiled slightly, watching her lips slowly curve upward. Sarah couldn't stand it anymore and slammed the table as she stood up.
Are you even human? Those were 48 lives. How can you smile?
My smile instantly turned cold. Let me tell you a story. That's not a story. That's a real experience that happened to me. My wife and I had a daughter. As a teacher at a prestigious academy, I went through great lengths to get her enrolled. Although we knew that with our financial resources we couldn't compare with the young masters and misses at the school. We always fantasized that in this place with concentrated educational resources, our daughter could also have a bright future. However, her grades didn't improve but declined, and she, who used to love laughing, kept a straight face all day. When I asked her classmates, each one claimed they didn't know anything. When she came home disheveled once again, my wife forcibly removed her clothes. Even though she had applied a lot of powder on her body, how could my wife, as a doctor, not see that she had been harmed by more than one person? I reported it to the police, but all surveillance records had been erased, and my daughter wouldn't say a word. In the end, the matter was dropped. Sarah gripped the corner of her clothes.
Then you should have transferred her to another school as soon as possible.
I sighed. That's what I planned to do. But the day before the transfer procedures were completed, she lost her life. Sarah almost knocked over her cup.
What was the cause?
The school immediately took the body away, claiming she had contracted a serious infectious disease and needed immediate disposal. My wife and I couldn't stop them.
Mr. Harrison.
Sarah hesitated for a moment before carefully asking,
Do you think they harmed your daughter so you made them lose their lives?
I don't think I have evidence. Sarah tensed up.
Can I see the evidence?
I've already destroyed it. Sarah's muscles slowly relaxed.
Based on your word alone, I cannot rationalize your actions.
No need to rationalize. Sarah clenched her fist.
But even if what you say is true, they didn't deserve to lose their lives. There are laws to judge them. It's not your turn to take their lives.
Ha! I laughed. Who said I took them? Didn't you participate in the autopsy? Was even one of them taken by someone else? Sarah paused. She knew best. 48 remains. Not one had died from homicide. The atmosphere froze. She still wasn't giving up.
Even if everything you said is true, they were a group of extremely selfish people who would only try to save their lives under any circumstances. How could they be willing to make an irreversible choice because of one question?
I laughed with a snort, looking at her. I told you, from beginning to end, I only did one thing. Gave them a question. And I can tell you, each of them got a pretty good score. The kitchen timer rang again. I took the soup out of the pot, and the aroma immediately filled the entire house. Sarah swallowed again. All right, Dr. Sarah, come try some. I ladled a bowl of soup and placed it in front of her. Life is unpredictable. It's all in the past now. The aroma of the soup stimulated Sarah's taste buds. Her gaze couldn't move away from it for a while, but she finally shook her head.
I'll pass.
I ladled a bowl for myself, sat across from her, and began drinking on my own. She still didn't move, her gaze falling on the kitchen knife beside my hand. I realized this and laughed as I moved the knife to her side. It's a habit. I just feel insecure, so I always hold a knife. Sarah quickly pulled the knife toward herself before hesitantly picking up the bowl.
So, what exactly was that question of yours?
Drink first, and I'll tell you after you drink. She hesitated for a moment and took a sip. Instantly, her eyes widened slightly.
She
took another small sip.
What seasoning did you use?
What's wrong?
I've tasted cuisine from all over the world, but I can't identify your recipe.
I couldn't help but curve my lips. It's really about choosing good, raw materials. Sarah didn't dwell on it and put down the bowl.
I've had some. You should tell me what your question was, right?
She hesitated for a moment, then tilted her head back and drained the entire bowl.
Now can you tell me?
I nodded, and that day's question slowly unfolded in my narration. Dr. Sarah, do you remember how difficult that autopsy was? Many of the remains' causes stumped even veteran forensic doctors. Recalling that horrific scene, she frowned.
Yes.
That was their answer sheet. These children got the highest scores from me. Sarah's brows furrowed deeply. I rested my chin on my hand, looking at her leisurely with a smile. I gave them 10 minutes to make an irreversible choice, and remains that could stump forensic doctors from your medical school. The perfect answer sheet. How could they not? Sarah's eyes reddened.
How could anyone risk their life for this kind of perfect score? And they would have fought back. How could you, one person, fight against 48 students?
I didn't fight. I shook my head. Those disobedient students who disrupted the exam order lost their lives instantly upon touching me. Sarah laughed angrily.
Mr. Harrison, do you really think you're a novelist? The idea that children who don't follow rules in mystery stories get forcibly punished is ultimately fiction. This is reality, and
I don't deny it. I smiled and nodded at her. What I'm telling you is also reality. Dr. Sarah, do you remember who among those children lost their life first? Recalling that horrific scene, Sarah painfully closed her eyes.
David, prodigy accepted to Ivy Spring Academy.
No, I shook my head. Sarah was stunned.
Impossible. I couldn't have remembered wrong. I personally performed his autopsy.
He indeed wasn't the first. It was Jake.
Jake?
Sarah was stunned, seemingly trying hard to recall something.
I've checked the 48 remains many times. There was no one by that name.
Who said there were 48 children? I looked at her. Dr. Sarah, there were always 53 students in that exam room. Sarah obviously didn't believe it, but she didn't argue about this point.
Even if what you say is true, there was no reason for everyone to make an irreversible choice.
But what if one person automatically lost their life every 10 minutes?
What?
Sarah was stunned. I smiled at her. Imagine this. I locked everyone up and gave them a ridiculous exam question. They were angry and unwilling, so they attacked me as a group. However, the first person to touch me suddenly exploded, losing their life in a horrifying way. Wouldn't the others be deterred? Sarah swallowed. Of course, just one loss couldn't intimidate everyone, so a few more people refused to give up and wanted to harm me. But the second person to touch me lost their life even more horribly than the previous one. So everyone hesitated. At this moment, the last skeptic charged at me again, but this time he lost his life instantly, even before touching me. I tapped my temple. I was more merciful to him, just twisting his posture and leaving him with a complete body. These 3 people were Jake, Ryan, and Alex. Sarah didn't really believe it, but still went along with my story.
Assuming you're telling the truth, then the remaining children just had to wait until the exam ended. With a 2-hour exam time, at most, only 12 would lose their lives.
I raised an eyebrow. Who said they could live until the end?
What?
Exam over. All students lose their lives by force. That was my real rule. Sarah looked at me in disbelief.
That's impossible.
I smiled leisurely as I stood up, patting her shoulder. I know you're curious about how I did it, but the story isn't over yet. Dr. Sarah, I remember that 5 years ago, you helped a group of doctors clear their names, right? Instantly, the shoulder under my hand stiffened. Sarah's breathing hitched. At that time, an entire medical team at Sarah's medical school was exposed for illegal organ trafficking. Some people who had just caught a cold turned into remains overnight. Until one day, a family accidentally discovered at a funeral that their father's body had long been missing internal parts. This caused a huge uproar. Just when the situation was at its peak, someone came forward with key evidence, clearing the medical team's name, simply because they had developed a treatment for a certain disease, and competitors wanted to destroy their reputation, making people afraid to accept their medicine so they could steal the research. After people realized they had made a mistake, they immediately turned their attention to the rumor monger, my wife. I pressed Sarah's shoulder. But you know best what that medical team did, don't you?
You're talking nonsense.
Sarah suddenly pushed me away. Sarah breathed rapidly.
You're just a madman. No matter what, you didn't need to cruelly make 48 children lose their lives.
I said coldly. It was 53. Sarah's body stiffened.
Jake, Ryan, Alex, wait, where are the other 2?
I know that in 2 hours, at most 12 people would lose their lives. Doing nothing and waiting was the best strategy. But what if I gave them a chance to survive? Sarah stared at me with wide eyes, and I slowly narrated the events of that day. After Jake, Ryan, and Alex lost their lives in succession, no one dared approach me anymore. And indeed, as I expected, not one of them actively ended their time. So, after 10 minutes passed, another participant suddenly exploded. Girls were already screaming and crying, and many students were on the verge of mental breakdown. The thought, I might be the one left behind, supported them and prevented them from completely losing their minds. I stood up, smiling at them. Who said you could survive to the end? Exam over. All participants who haven't submitted their papers, I kicked Alex's body, will lose their lives in a worse way than them. As I spoke, I touched Alex, who still had a complete body. The teacher won't let you answer questions for nothing. The student with the best performance, the teacher can give you a chance for a comeback. All students stared at me with wide eyes. I know you're all reluctant to give up your current beautiful lives. You enjoy resources and privileges that others don't have. But did you treasure them? I think today's exam can be enlightening. The students who survive will treasure every minute and second of their remaining lives. As I spoke, I touched Alex's head. Under everyone's gaze, he breathed heavily and opened his eyes. All the students stared wide-eyed. Clearly, his posture had just been twisted to an impossible angle. But in the time it took me to say one sentence, he had returned to normal, stumbling up from the ground and fearfully hiding behind his classmates. At this moment, 10 minutes had passed, and I snapped my fingers. Another participant collapsed. Now, in their eyes, I was no longer a devil, I was a god. I slightly curved my lips. The student with the highest score, I will let you return to your happy life. And the students forced to answer by me, failing grade. In an instant, the newly awakened Alex grabbed a pen and stabbed it into his own hand. At this moment, I had completely won the psychological battle. Someone couldn't take it anymore, screaming, "Can't lose my life," while shoving an eraser into their mouth. The scene was chaotic. Everything in the classroom that could be used was taken as a harmful tool. 2 hours later, when the exam ended, no one in the entire classroom was still alive. Sarah covered her mouth, seeming unable to hold on.
So, can you really bring people back?
Of course not, I laughed. Alex was just cooperating with me, and for people who know small tricks, contorting the body into an impossible, cursed-looking pose isn't difficult at all.
But one person losing their life every 10 minutes, losing it upon touching you, how do you explain that?
Of the 53 people in the exam room, besides the 48 you remember, the other 5 were my people. To make their losses create enough impact, I researched and rehearsed for a whole year. Sarah's teeth were almost ground to powder.
You're simply a demon.
I listened calmly to her curses without denial. Although the tragedy of that day was caused by those people's own hands, it was essentially my psychological manipulation.
This is a cult. Only cults make people willingly use their lives to perform a show with you.
Dr. Sarah, those people were never my believers. They were just children from ordinary families harmed by you and your team members. Sarah almost couldn't stand steady.
What nonsense are you talking about?
I stood up, approaching her step by step. Dr. Sarah, I've hated you since I was very young. It's just that at that time, the team was still led by your father, William. I never understood why my newborn brother became hopeless after being admitted to your hospital. Why did my mother get diagnosed with ALS after going to your hospital for a cold? Why did my father develop bone cancer after his fracture was handled by your specialists? It wasn't until I entered this elite academy that I gradually discovered the plasma technology you're researching can transfer newborn blood to older people, keeping them young forever. Newborn bone marrow can be used by you for various cancer treatments. So, I never saw my family's remains, and I couldn't even see my wife's last moment. At this point, Sarah had been cornered by me and collapsed weakly into the chair. I grabbed her chin. Dr. Sarah, do you remember your father? No, I should say your husband. Sarah's breathing hitched. Shh, I interrupted her, gently stroking her cheek. So good. A 48-year-old person who still looks like my daughter's age. Your husband must inject you with newborn plasma every month, right? Sarah became nervous, her hand secretly reaching for the kitchen knife.
Even if I did wrong things, what does this have to do with those 48 participants? Why involve them?
I slapped her hard across the face, looking down from above. Involve? Dr. Sarah, dare you guarantee that those 48 students never used my brother's plasma, never used my daughter's bone marrow, never used Alex's mother's retina, never used Ryan's father's liver? I curved my lips. Originally, a bunch of parasites occupying social resources, you protect them, but I insist on taking them. As I spoke, I grabbed Sarah's neck, forcing her to look at me. David, the so-called first child to lose their life, you mentioned, he's your son, isn't he? Sarah looked at me nervously without speaking. You talk about me cruelly, making 48 promising children lose their lives, but actually you only care about this one, don't you? I returned him to you, Dr. Sarah. How did your son's soup taste? Sarah's eyes suddenly widened. I laughed out loud. The reason you've never tasted this flavor is because that was your son's soup. Sarah froze. She suddenly covered her mouth, knelt on the ground, and vomited everywhere.
I'll kill you.
The kitchen knife was pulled toward her, and my shoulder blade instantly shattered.
Die.
Sarah cursed while frantically slashing at my body. I lay on the ground, blood trickling from the corner of my mouth, but I looked up at the ceiling and slowly smiled. From the day I planned revenge, those 5 children had entrusted their lives to me. Before proctoring, I asked them if they wanted to give up, but they just hid suicide devices on their bodies and room. And around my room, police and reporters had been ambushed from the beginning. By the time they rushed in, I was already beyond help, but I was still smiling. My relatives, loved ones, and comrades, I'm coming.